My dad was an assistant pastor there. He oversaw like lots of different things, worship, media, youth, your typical in ministry, just wearing 20 different hats, But he did that for just over 20 years. And then God called us both out to Connecticut about 11 years ago to a church that was dying. And I kind of started to tell the story last night, but picture 90 people in a building that seats 1,100 people, and that's what this church was. Like, it was just a massive church building, classroom space, kid space, none of it was being used. And the church was, like I said, like dying. As a matter of fact, they were months away from dying. And when my dad came and candidated, he basically didn't know much of that. He was just kind of trying to follow the Lord's leading. Well, of course, God calls him there, and kind of begrudgingly, almost like a Jonah story, my dad essentially says yes, and he goes out there and he finds out essentially how bad the church finances were. And it was so bad. I mean, guys, so just to give you guys like some insight, the church was bleeding like $10,000 or $20,000 a month out of savings to help support a dying school as well, which is a part of our ministry still. I don't know whether that's a blessing or a curse at this point, if you've been involved in Christian school ministry, but so we were kind of trying to support that, keep that alive, and the church, of course, was dying. So he figured out, by the time he started pastoring, this church was about 6 months away from just closing its doors, selling the property to some, developer, and just, downsizing. And God started to do just an incredible work. But before he did, my dad honestly thought, he's like, hey, I'm pretty sure God's just brought me here to like crush me, to just continue to, strip me down and teach me, whatever he wants to teach me. And of course, we know, based off of stories in the New Testament and the Old Testament, sometimes God uses those things in our lives, right? And so, again, long story short, without going into all the details, God started to do a work. Our church today is, Mark down there increased our weekly attendance by about 40%, which is kind of cool. I guess we're a church of 2,000 in Mark's mind, but we're a church of about 1,300 to 1,400 right now on a weekly basis, and God's grown it. And more important than the numbers, much more important than the numbers, are the lives that represent that change, basically. And we've seen dozens of marriages mended, families brought back together, people saved and baptized, and discipled believers, and so it's just been incredible. So worship ministry has been a huge part of just a huge area of development. When I first came, there was no music ministry. Okay, so like there was nothing that I was coming to that was like, man, we got a good foundation. I'm just gonna crack this because the music I have I get distracted pretty easy. So yeah, there was nothing to come to, essentially. And about a few months in, after I was hired to do youth. And a few months in, my dad goes, hey, I think I want you to do the music. And I was like, garbage. Like, this is the one thing that I really do not want to do. So my degree was in church ministries, and I hadn't really, like some Bible college students, hadn't really thought past being a youth pastor, and so I just thought, man, this is what I'm gonna do with my life. And God gave me music now, and I'm like, okay, Lord, thanks, but no thanks. I'll do, the best that I can with this, but there's nothing really to work with. And there was a very dear lady. She's still in our church. Her name's Judy Bankston, and Judy was our church pianist at the time. And guys, our church music at the time, and if this is your church music still, I'm not bashing this, but our church music at the time was, I would get up and I'd wave my hands to the congregation and lead them like a choral conductor, and it was just me. Yeah, right. Some of your eyes got real big. It was me and Judy, and it was just, victory in Jesus, just straight hymns, and honestly, that's what I had grown up hearing my whole life, and that was kind of the model that I'd seen, so I was comfortable enough to do that. I had taken congregational song leading, and, as a, prerequisite for my degree in, Bible college, so I could handle this, right? But the thing was, how we started out, and I mean this So Judy's like the sweetest lady ever, but she even on hymns had a hard time following me. Okay, like so. Just picture like those are our beginnings. Okay, like that's where we started. Today we have about 35 or 36 team members between the band and our vocalists. And God's really brought together just an incredible team of people that I get to serve with. And he was talking about biblical community today, and like I'm so thankful for my community and the team I get to serve with, and every week it's a team effort. It's not all centered around me or on some other team member. It truly is a team effort, and it's been a blessing to see. So I think the title of this session is something having to do with developing a team, and what's the title again? What's the title again? Staying organized and developing a team, right? So we're going to talk through some of those principles. I'll give you guys just high end what we'll talk through, and what I'd like this to be. Okay, is just everyone hear me out here. What I'd like this to be is almost more of like a discussion and a question and answer. Simply because on the third discussion or whenever they do the question and answer, I will not be at that point anyway. So I'd like to treat both my sessions more so as that anyway. But here's what we'll cover. Okay, high end. If you're taking notes or whatever, we're going to cover recruitment, what that looks like in the early days. If you have questions that have to do with, again, we're talking about just building a team from nothing. Recruitment. We're going to be talking about having a set of team guidelines and guardrails, giving a set of expectations, and kind of what the repercussions are for your team with that. There's a lot that I could talk through there. Number 3, we'll talk about our onboarding process, if that interests you guys at all. So like, we do have a process. Like, not anyone just comes and is like, hey, I want to be on the worship team, and we're like, okay, yeah, like let's add you next week. That's not really how it works. So we'll talk through onboarding process. Number 3, number 4, we'll talk about planning ahead, and kind of how far ahead. I tend to plan just because it helps me. And then number 5, we'll really get into kind of the nitty gritty, the details of weekly planning, and I'll just call that planning engaging services. Okay, so like, what are the nuts and bolts of that look like? So hopefully you have some questions that have to do with those areas. But man, in terms of building a team and staying organized, those are things that kind of came to mind. Before we jump in, and since we have like an hour at this point, I'd love to just hear from you guys really quick. Could we just go around the table and just give me your name, maybe what church you're from, and then just so I kind of have a context, maybe just like how big your guys' ministry is. I think that'll help me kind of understand what we're dealing with here. So let's start with Jacob.
So I'm Jacob Fisher, and this is my wife Emily, and we're at a church plant of 8 years in Davenport, Iowa. So actually, I've been a part of the church plant since day one, but was part of the worship team, but now have stepped into the role of leading the worship as we planted another church out of ours. So for the last 2.5 years, I've been leading worship, and it's been a really exciting time. We have about, I think, 11 people that we work with on the team, and then our weekly services, there's about 175. We're just about to move to a new building, so hoping to see some growth in the team and the church going forward with that.
That's great. Thanks, Jacob.
Mason Lee. This is my wife, Drew. We're from Lighthouse Baptist Church in LaSalle, Illinois. Up until about a year ago, we were just traditional hymns only, traditional song leading. We've had our worship team for about a year, where I'm the worship leader. We have about 10 on our team. Our church is about 50 to 75 people.
Okay.
So we're on the small side, and we're just really trying to organize and lead the worship better, more God-honoring, besides just doing things just the way things have always been done.
Yeah.
So we're just continually looking for new methods that might be a little more helpful.
Yep. Okay. Good. Thanks, Mason.
I'm Jordan Regenbach. I attend here, and
Okay.
I'm just getting on the worship team. So
Let's go.
I'm not like leading it.
Right
at
on,
all.
man. Awesome. He's like, I'm just here. Like, can I just, like, why do I need to introduce myself? Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah,
Appreciate
same
it, man.
here. I'm Kiera, and I'm just getting on the worship team too. So we're siblings, all three of us.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, I'm Audrey.
Audrey, you're the drummer, right?
I am.
How could you not mention that? Come on. Oh, really? Okay. That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
How long have you guys played?
We worship here. I've played for 9 years.
Okay.
It's probably like
Well, usually.
6 years, off and on.
Yeah, so we moved from Colorado, so we moved around to a bit of different churches. We
Oh, okay.
had come from a big family.
Okay.
So we've got a bit of experience in worship settings, like in youth ministry, and then also on Sunday mornings. So
Gotcha.
we do worship settings.
I'm Emma. I'm
Emma.
a junior in college getting my music degree.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm here to learn more practical stuff that I wouldn't really learn in classes.
Gotcha.
So,
That's awesome. Where are you going to college?
Moody Bible Institute. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah,
Okay.
I go to Moody Church as well. So,
That's
I'm
really
leaving
cool.
tonight so I can serve there tomorrow.
That's cool. I've been to that. I just recently visited that campus like a few years ago
Ah.
for the first time.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was pretty
it's
cool.
small, but it's great.
Yeah, that's really cool. My dad ended up publishing his last couple books through Moody Publishing, and so we got to kind of visit, their, publications ministry, and I know, am good friends with Tim Sisk. Do you know Tim Sisk at all? Okay, he teaches there at the institute. He's the head of like outreach and missions, and
Okay.
he's son of Dr. Don Sisk. If you guys know Don Sisk at all, but yeah. Anyway, that's cool. It's really cool. How far away is that? Is it like a couple hours?
Yeah, we took the train here and it was like just under 2 hours.
Okay.
The train, and it'll probably be like 2.5 hours on the train tonight.
Okay,
So, yeah.
that's awesome. All right, Cam.
My name is Cameron. I am leading worship volunteer at a church plant the size of about 15, 20 people, and we're fresh. We just have me leading with an acoustic guitar. So I want to learn and grow and learn how to organize and lead a team and grow the team and recruit more instrumentalists and instruments, and I'm excited to be here.
My name is Trey Rowell. I currently attend Crosspoint Baptist Church in Indianapolis, Indiana. I have a vision. My dad has been a pastor for about 9 years now. Not at Crosspoint. It's a different pastor now. But currently, God's been working on my heart these last 2 years to become a church planter on the south side of Detroit. So I'm in the process of training under my dad under the church, and as well as been gifted talents of worship leading as well. But wanted to come here because as I'm becoming a church planter, I want to see some good habits, some good routines for me being organized and what leading a team looks like for the city of Detroit.
I'm Audrey Rowell. I'm his sister, and he said everything y'all need to know. So, also, what's with the pass the baton situation? What's
It's a mic.
I think it's a microphone.
oh, okay.
It looks like a detonator. What is going on with this?
Gary Webster. I attend Cedar Hills Baptist Church on the northwest side of Peoria. I've been a member there for 25 years or so. We're just trying to get things organized. We've got a team, and we just went through and redid all of our XLR cables, and because things were labeled years ago, and then cables quit, and so that's where we're at. Is just getting organized and everything from planning to the equipment.
Thanks for sharing, guys. What I'd love to do next, and I'll talk for a little bit here, but I think what I'd like to do after that is I just want to hear from you guys on what are some of the struggles that you're facing, and maybe if you're just getting into it or you're about to plant a church or whatever, maybe you haven't faced some of those struggles yet, and that's fine. But what are some of the struggles that you're facing in terms of organizing a team? Some of the things that we talked through now that I've kind of, given you kind of high end what we'll be talking about. So be thinking about that. Okay. What I guess I just wanted to open up this session or this, discussion with is this, organization isn't primarily about, serving ourselves, like as worship pastors, worship leaders. Organization, I've always looked through the lens of just how is my organization helping shepherd the people that God's brought to me. Okay, so think of everything that we talk through today. I want you to think of it through that lens. Like, we are called to be shepherds, and so often we get in this position of, worship leader, worship pastor, band member, whatever. And we get into this like, okay, God's called me to play the acoustic guitar, or again, going back to last night, our function more informs our identity versus the other way around. If we're called to ministry, we are called to be shepherds. And so our primary calling isn't to help, teach somebody how to play keys or to play the flute or to play the drums or whatever. Our primary calling is, man, how do we shepherd these people so that they're using their gifts and abilities for the Lord in a healthy way, and they're not redlining, they're not overdoing it. And how am I helping resource them and stay organized so that they're not becoming frustrated with my leadership, and that's causing them to get, again, burnout in ministry or not wanting to serve, right? To me, it's all connected. Like, it's all connected. Organization doesn't first and foremost serve myself. It serves our team. And then an outflow of that is our church family, right? So it's all about shepherding people. And again, a lot of people get into that pastoral role, or they get into the worship pastor role, and it's all that, like, their forte is music theory, or again, they can play the acoustic guitar, keys, or whatever, and they have the music side of it down. But in terms of shepherding, they're just so inept. And that's something that I feel like should be a focus in our role. So anything we talk about today, just look through that lens, okay? I guess that's what I try to say. So hopefully I just gave you enough time to think of a struggle, okay, or an issue that you're dealing with, right? But who wants to start? What's something that you feel like, man, in terms of organizing the team, getting the team off the ground, maybe the question is, where do I start? Whatever it is, what are some struggles that you feel like you guys have faced? Anyone want to start? And then we'll still jump into this stuff. Don't worry. But there.
One of the things I know, dealing with volunteers, you might have someone seems to always be missing. You know what I mean? And which is fine. It's the way it is. But just we rehearse on Wednesday night after Awana's program's done and any of the Bible studies going on. And everyone wants to, people want to get out of there, get home. And so it used to be we, and I struggled with this because my mindset has been just be prepared. Not perfect, just be prepared. So that when you're up there,
right,
and you're playing, I'm going to miss a chord. That doesn't bother me, but at least be prepared. You just know what your intros are. And so I think for just those aspects of it that, I get it. I want to go home too, but not everyone has the same view of those positions.
Yeah.
If you're, and I don't know. Sometimes I think we need to have. If you're part of that team, you're part of that body that's fitly joined together. Man. We need our drummer. Man, we need. And not only that, but the other thing that we're working on is. And I'll just admit it. 2 Christmases ago, there's this song service planned, right? And like last minute, the next thing I know, it's just me and another singer. And I play guitar, and that's how I started in church. Was like this gentleman, just playing guitar at the podium, leading hymns, and it wrecked me because in my mind. It was supposed to be this, and it wasn't. So it's that. Okay, so coming up in those situations, you've got a worship team of, let's say, 8. Okay, what's plan B in the event of?
Sure. Right, yeah, sure.
Let's put plan B together. Okay, what's this look like? All right, we're sliding the microphone over the middle stage, and then the guitar, condenser mic, and whatever you do, but having that, being prepared for those things.
Yeah.
What are you going to do when if you've been doing this long enough, when's the sound system going to quit? It's Sunday morning, about 15 minutes before you need it, right?
That's right.
So we have our electric piano,
Yep.
has its own speaker, and then my guitar, I use my guitar amp for a monitor. So if we've got electricity, we can bail on the sound system, and so that's some of the stuff that we're just trying to think through, and but that's the frustrating thing is not having that not having those things in place, or even have thought through those.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, that's good. I wrote that down, so we'll adjust that here in a minute. Somebody else? What's another one?
So for me personally, bivocationally, time management is a really key thing. I have to, and I struggle with it because 40+ hour week at work, but then working, to make sure that Sunday's set is we do 2 services because we're hoping to go to 1 service very soon in our new building, which will be very freeing for me.
Right.
But working with that is just sometimes a struggle. Sometimes, like you said, the people showing up or not able to show up on, because I only have certain amounts of times that I can show up as well. So, being fair and balanced to everyone as well. So
that's really good. That's going to be a great thing to discuss here. But I feel like what's at the heart of what you're talking about is, how do I do things really efficiently? Like, how can I find hacks that help me to be able to do ministry better, being that I am bivocational? I think there's a session coming up with Victor where he talks about bivocational. So yeah, you definitely probably need to go to that. He's a great dude. Anybody else? Mason, do you have some?
We're a smaller church, and we're doing things. The last year has been completely different to what we've done in the past. And it's getting to change the mindset of it doesn't matter, we're a small church, doesn't have to be overly organized. And just as I lead the team, just to take it seriously, because we're not necessarily just leading 50 people, it's worship, our Savior. Just working on changing the mindset of, just because there may not be a large congregation, the level of organization should still be high.
Yeah.
And just the planning and everything should just be to the best of our ability. Not just small, only half people we thought were going to show up today in the congregation.
Yeah, right.
We can kind of take a break,
Mm-hmm.
a step back.
Right.
Just to keep that idea of to the best of our ability, regardless of who's sitting in front of us,
Mm-hmm.
regardless.
That's good. That's really good. Anybody else? Cam, did you have something or no?
So our church is kind of a revitalizing type of deal, type of thing. So we're basically renting out the building. So our church started out as a small group. It started out, and the senior pastor Bob, it started out having a small group in his home for several years. And then my pastor, the lead pastor, Damien, he reached out to Bobby, connected with Bobby, the senior pastor.
Okay.
And then they began to plant, and they planted it, last April. And we're trying to, there's older generation in there, so we're trying to figure out an agreement upon style and implementing some different things like planning center, which I don't really know much about planning center.
Yeah.
I want to implement that.
How many of you guys in the room use Planning Center? Your team uses Planning Center.
Learning.
Okay, good. Cool.
Want to learn more about that, definitely. And Pastor actually has been doing the slides too. We want to get some more volunteers, definitely, with the recruitment.
Yeah. Okay, good.
And I'm just leading with acoustic. I've been leading worship with an acoustic guitar since I was about 19.
Gotcha. Okay, that's awesome. Anyone else, real quick?
Yeah, as I'm transitioning into this church plant, praying with the Lord as far as taking a team over there, and I'm starting to realize too that as God leads and as I lead this group, how I realize that there's going to be certain ideas and things that other people are going to say, like, hey, we should inquire this when we do worship, or we should do this when we do scripture or Bible study, or whatever the case may be. And some of those ideas can be great, and some of the ideas are not so great. And it's in keeping in check of how do I tell the team to organize it, like, hey, let's take these ideas before the Lord and really pray about it and discuss together if it fits into the ministry and what God can work through that.
Yeah.
So
That's really good. Okay. Good stuff. Anyone else real quick? And we'll start to walk through this stuff. Okay. Let's take it from the top. Okay, so if you're recruiting a new team, where do you start? And I kind of told you guys where we started. It was me up there waving my arms with a pianist who couldn't follow me on a lot of songs. We're singing only hymns. So man, where do we go from there? And how do we start? And so for us, man, that first step, and it was kind of, it has been a series of just incremental, just small steps over time. But our first step was just, man, let's get more singers up here than just one guy waving his arms. Like and what's the thinking behind that? Those of you guys that sang last night, I mean, you guys infused energy into the room. You're helping engage the congregation, right? That's the idea. The idea is, let's sing. And let's sing loud together. Let's let this be, like he talked about today, something that's done as a team and then engages our church family and helps them sing. So that was kind of our first step, which was just, man, let's just recruit a couple more singers here to sing with us on these hymns. And so I remember the first two people on our team were brothers and sisters, and it was Greg and Katie Riendo, and they're still just great members of our church. They're married now, not to each other, obviously. I think that goes without saying. But they're married now, still serving, whether it's on the worship team or other places. Just incredible people. But I remember every Sunday, guys, it was me, Greg, and Katie, and they were faithful every week to that calling. And that's kind of where we started. When you start to recruit a team, there's a lot of different philosophies behind that. The approach that I take is almost like I almost kind of view it like a funnel. So at the beginning of your ministry, you really want to cast the net wide, and you want to say yes to almost anybody who is willing, I mean, I hate to say it like that because that sounds demeaning, but you've got to start somewhere, And you guys will notice the theme with everything that we talk about, but it's all about stewardship. It's all about stewardship. It goes back to that New Testament principle. He that is faithful in that which is least will be faithful also in much, right? God, I think at times tests us as worship leaders, as pastors, and I think sometimes he waits to see, are we going to move with what we have? Are you going to get that sound system that's been in, your closet, your church closet that you haven't cleaned out in 15 years, that's sitting there waiting to be used before I give you a new sound system? Are you going to use what talent that you do have at your church, even though it might not be CCLI standards, that type of, even though it's not recording artist type of standard, are you going to use what I've given to you? And then are you going to not just use that, but are you going to maximize it? Are you going to do all that you can with that next step? And then I'm going to bless you. And so we did that. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way towards Judy or towards Greg and Katie, who helped us kind of get off the ground, because they do have talents and abilities that really blessed our church at that time. Our team looks totally different now, totally different. But that's because at every stage we went, okay, God, here's the resources that you gave us, and we're going to maximize those to the best of our ability. And so in terms of recruitment, again, back to that funnel analogy, man, it's going to be really big when you first start your ministry. Just cast the net, cast it wide. What that doesn't mean is, and we'll look at this next in the next couple of steps, that doesn't mean cast the net and anyone who wants to just have them on however, and let them sing whatever they want to sing. I had a lady, probably 2 months into me being like music pastor or whatever, she came up to me and she's like, hey, I play the harmonica. And she's like, can I do like a special on Sunday night? And, I have no clue what I'm doing, and I'm like, sure, yeah. What do I say at that point, So I said yes to a harmonica special, and we had it on a Sunday night. And my dad looked at me like midway through the special. He's like, Lance, this is a blessing, but let's not let this happen again, And I was like, message received. Honestly, it was something that, at the time, and here's the thing, it's all about context, right? Like, if you're in West Virginia and like you've got, that vibe going in your, that style going on in your worship service, and that's going to be a part of it, fantastic. In Connecticut, I'll tell you, like, harmonicas and banjos just about go over like a lead balloon. Like, it's just like, what is going on here? It's a different style up there. It might even be different here. So all that to say, don't cast the net wide, right? I mean, without any standards, without any process of understanding how this goes. And then the more that you start to maximize those resources, the more God's going to bring you people, and you're going to realize when He brings you people, in some regards, you're gonna not feel ready for it. Okay, you're going to feel like, man, God's blessed me, like He's given me what I wanted, and I still wasn't ready for it. And so I've got to kind of get my act together in terms of organization, which is what we'll come to next. Okay, so recruitment, again, at the beginning, cast the net wide, and as your team grows, that's gonna funnel down into something that's much more much smaller and much more selective. Again, I told you guys we have 36 team members right now. So what our team recruitment looks like, to be honest, it doesn't look like team recruitment anymore. Like, I know it sounds bad, but we just had this emphasis called Team Up in our church. And it's basically where we inspire the church family to, hey, get involved on a team. And we have like 20 teams in our, some people call them, ministries, whatever. But we have like 20 of them. It's like we got the greeters and the hospitality and the this and the that, kids ministry, worship. And I'll be honest with you guys, we don't put worship ministry on that list as they're signing up. You said, like, that's mean, that's not right. Just at our stage, we just don't, because what happens is, two things, okay? What happens is we end up setting an expectation for people that there's still this massive net when actually the team, by and large, is filled. Like, we're functioning, like things are moving forward. Does that mean we don't add anybody to the team? No. But it means, so here's the thing, when somebody comes to our church and they're talented, God reveals that to us. You know what I'm saying? Like, that shows up. I start hearing from people, hey, you need to, you need to listen to Takia. We just added Takia to our team. Sweet young girl, beautiful voice. And we have a lot of female vocalists, but Takia is talented enough, and she has the heart to where she's going to be a great addition. Well, how did that happen? Takia didn't see on Team Up, worship team and sign up and she's on the team. I heard kind of through word of mouth, and I let her be a part of our worship choir, which is a totally different thing as well. So I let her be a part of worship choir for about a year, and I just observed her commitment and her faithfulness to that, and saw that she wasn't about herself and she wasn't about the spotlight, and she could serve in a choir and be totally content, And then God brought that to the surface, right? And now we're adding to the team. I guess all I'm saying is, over time, that's going to be shaped a little differently, and that doesn't mean that we need to be mean-spirited about it, or that doesn't mean that we're not adding people to the team. It just means that God's going to show us those things in more unique ways than I feel like at the beginning, where you're trying to get something off the ground, right? I think you guys understand that, but hopefully my heart is portrayed appropriately about that, and we'll talk through questions in a minute if you have a question about that. But so that's where we are now in terms of recruitment. When somebody shows interest, or we begin to show interest in them for the worship team, what I do is I give them a set of guidelines. How many of you? I'd be curious to know for your guys' church. Sure. Do you guys have a set of guidelines that you give to someone who's new on the team? Jordan, you're new to the team. Did you get a set of guidelines? Like what are, okay. So what do those look like for your guys' team? Is it like a page? Is it like a little booklet? What does it look like?
It was like 2 pages.
Okay.
Just worth of stuff, just like how long you've come, what your commitment looks like, what you do. It's just
and then also like the expectations.
Expectations with it too.
Yeah, good.
When to show up for practice, when to show up for like on Sunday mornings.
All like the practical stuff.
Yeah, what there's a dress code.
Yep. That's really good.
Behind all that too, and not just like saying what the dress code, but also explaining why it is the way it is. So just giving a whole set of guidelines and
talking
wanting
through
to know
their
more.
mission, their values and stuff too.
Yeah.
That's really good.
And just aligning your standards with like, you know, this is why we're doing what we're doing.
Yes.
This is our goal as the worship team and kind of, you know, what we're doing.
Yes.
So.
It's really important that there's clarity to that, guys. Like there's a lot of value in that, and we'll unpack why in a minute. There's a lot of reasons why, but it doesn't matter how big your church is. You should have a set of guidelines, and they could be smaller. You know, again, it could, maybe you're just starting out and it's a one pager. You know, or maybe you have a ministry like ours of 1,400, and ours is probably 5 or 6 pages. You know. So it could look different, but the bottom line is where there aren't a set of guidelines and expectations, you're going to run into things down the road that are going to cause you much more drama and frustration as a team and as a leader than if you don't have anything. Just recently, I helped out a church that is a church of about a few hundred, and up to that point, they hadn't really put any guidelines in place. It was just kind of like, hey, you know, they did some vetting to some degree, you know, like they'd meet with them briefly and talk about this is when we practice, but there were no like philosophical guidelines or even spiritual guidelines to adding somebody to the team. And what ended up happening was, again, where there's not a set of expectations, like drama can be infused into situations. And a girl posted a photo on social media. Social media just causes way more problems than it does help nowadays, I feel like. But I sound like an old dude saying that. I'm only 32, I promise. But she posted a photo, and it was, you know, according to, you know, what their church guidelines were in their own minds. Again, this wasn't on paper or anything, right? This wasn't agreed to by her or anything. But they posted a photo that you know, wasn't extremely inappropriate, but was just something that was like, I don't know that that's becoming of someone that we want on stage. You guys with me? So what the church decided was, we don't really need to do guidelines, expectations, whatever. But really, in their minds, they had a set of guidelines and expectations. They just didn't communicate them clearly, you know. And so what happened was, again, drama ensued, right? So of course they reached out to her, they talked about the photo. Of course the girl's offended because she hasn't been given a set of expectations. She doesn't, know. She's a relatively new Christian within the last couple years. And, you know, long story short, that caused some, like, kind of a string of drama on that worship team for the next 2 years, where what ended up happening was about half of the worship team ended up kind of leaving and siding with that girl and some others that had a bad spirit about that incident. Isn't that crazy? Like, that's what happens, you know. And I can see both sides. You say, like, was the church right in that? Yeah, they have the right to be able to go to her and address those things. But was the girl also in some ways not communicated those guidelines, and is that not appropriate as well? Yeah, like it's kind of a team thing. So when you don't have a set of expectations guidelines, it can cause a lot of drama. What do our guidelines look like? I'll if any of you guys want these, just give me your email afterwards. I can just email you our set of guidelines. But basically, what we help somebody understand from the beginning is this. I talk about our motives. So first thing on page 1, you'll see our motives. And it's like, there's some scripture in there, and it's like, hey, this is why we do worship. We don't do worship so that, like, you can, come in and, ball out and, like, be the star. Like, this isn't about you, This is about the congregation singing together, all of us with one voice, many different ethnicities, many different, as much as Newington, Connecticut offers, right? But many different ethnicities, many different age groups, all singing together to the glory of our Lord. And that's a reflection of what we see in Revelation, right? So that's where those are our motives. That's kind of, and then we talk about our process. And then our philosophy is kind of the third section, and that's where I break down, hey, there's 2 groups at Emmanuel. There's 2 groups of service. There's servant leadership. Here, real quick. I'm trying to remember what these are. Let me pull them up real quick. I don't want to botch them for you guys. Yeah, that's what it is. It's servant leadership and servant support. Okay. So we talk about, there's a lot of teams that fall into that servant support category, like hospitality, behind the scenes ministries. And if you're new to Emmanuel, you can get plugged right into those and get going. But then there's servant leadership. And what I help them understand from the beginning is we view somebody being on the band or on the worship team, we view that really as serious as we would view, okay, we're going to let that person lead a group, or we're going to let them teach a Sunday school class, or we're going to let them teach the Bible in front of people. You guys with me? Because that's what we're doing on a Sunday, right? Like, we're, again, putting scripture in people's mouths. We're teaching them the Word of God. So if we're going to hold Sunday school leaders and pastors and other people to those standards, in some ways we also want to hold that standard to the people that get up and lead our congregation. So here's the thing, right from the get-go, what that does to a volunteer, that helps them understand, whoa, this is like they view this as a very serious thing, right? And there's a gravity to that, there's a weight to that, that really sets the tone from the beginning, okay? And what it communicates to them is, hey, we don't just add anybody to this team. So the fact that we're having this conversation right now with you means that in many ways we see those qualities in you, okay? And here's another important thing that we'll cover in this room right now, which is you've got to call people, I think people enjoy in many ways being called to a high standard. I think sometimes our I'm speaking for myself because I've done this so often. I think sometimes our tendency is to go, man, I just don't want to bug people. Like, I don't want to mess up their schedules. I don't want to be a burden to them. I don't want to burn them out, right? And in doing so, I think sometimes we can call them to a pretty low standard. So we need to call them to a reasonably high standard. Nothing that's out of the stratosphere, nothing that's unreasonable, but a reasonably high standard. And when I'm telling them, hey, this is a position of servant leadership, they're understanding, okay, I'm being called to something that's higher than just a regular church member. You guys get that? Like, this isn't just Joe Schmo in the pew, okay? Though we love Joe Schmo, and he's a valued member of our church. Value, there's no difference, but in terms of what we're calling you to with influence, that's the difference. And then in that, we do focus on, hey, our church is handing you influence, okay? In many ways, this is us handing you a set of keys to our congregation, and you have the ability now to influence them. And so what does that affect? And here's what we talked through in the document, if this helps you guys at all. We talked through simple things like you got to be a church member. Like, we're calling you to salvation, baptism, and church membership, right? We're calling you to faithful generosity to the Lord and His work. Do we check on that? Do I check giving records on my worship team? No. But we just expect between you and the Lord that you're going to be doing that, right? That's something that's going to be done out of pure motives. We talked through other major things like your lifestyle, okay? So you guys may or may not agree with this, and that's fine. But we call people to a pretty high standard in terms of alcohol. So in terms of drinking, both me and my father come from a family. So for him, it's one generation removed. For me, it's two. We come from a family that was very affected by alcohol, which I won't go into because they're very personal stories. But the way that we view this in terms of our church is, hey, we just ask you not to drink, And am I asking people every week, did you drink? No, I'm not doing that, okay? But we do ask, hey, we just want to call you to that high standard. We can talk in this room, and it's not the conversation to have right now, but if we wanted to, we could go around and both give biblical positions on both sides of that, right? And that's great. That's good and fine. But again, they're being called to a different standard, right? So Lance, is that appropriate? Is that okay? Yeah, it's okay, because God's given you the authority, if you're in that position, to help shape those values, okay? And you got to remember something. They're coming to you. You're not coming to them, okay? Maybe at the beginning, you're more so coming to them please, I need help, right? But in many aspects, they're coming to your church family to be a part. And so don't be afraid to hold that standard. So in lifestyle, we talked through things like alcohol, tobacco, smoking, things like that. We ask them to abstain from those things. We do ask them to be mindful and discerning in their social media. So that is something that we address right there. hey, we understand that social media is pretty divisive when it comes to politics and when it comes to things that, quite honestly, could hurt your testimony or your influence, you know. And so maybe it's, again, going back to that, you know, example with the girl in the photo in that smaller church. That's something that they could have nipped in the bud right from the beginning, right? That's something that they could have addressed right from the beginning. And then if something were to happen, they come back and go, hey, we talked about this. Like, can you help me with this? You know, graciously. So I think having that set of expectations is huge in terms of lifestyle. We do talk about being divisive on social media. We don't want somebody who's caught in a heated argument on a Saturday night about, you know, President Donald Trump, you know, and then who gets up on Sundays and is like, you know, yet not I, but through Christ. You know, it's just, it can seem duplicitous a little bit. And also what it can do is it can hurt your influence, you know. People are on social media. If they saw that Saturday night and then they see you get up on a Sunday and you're leading the congregation, some people might be fine with it, but some people might be like, man, that like they're a pretty divisive personality. Why are they leading us? You know, so we ask them to be mindful in terms of their lifestyle. I won't walk through all those guidelines. You guys can take a look at those, but those are a few big things that we hit on. And bottom line is this: if you don't have expectations or standards, then you're going to face drama in the future. And when you do face the drama, regardless, you're not going to have anything to go back to and go, hey, we talked through this. Do you remember this? You know, just recently I had a couple on our team, and again, this is a preference thing, and that's fine. But with the whole alcohol thing, right? We call our team members to, again, just abstain from drinking alcohol, and it is a preferential thing, but it's something that we have the right to do. And so we call them to that standard, and they're an incredible couple, but they ended up like posting something on social media that was just like completely in disregard to that specific standard. Okay. So like, what do I do? You know, I have the decision to avoid it, which as a leader doesn't send a good message to your team because you're not consistent, or I end up meeting with them. So I end up meeting with them, and I said, hey guys, do you remember when we talked through some of those guidelines? Like, I'm so glad you guys are on the team. So glad you're serving. But do you remember like this little section where we just talked about our influence and us kind of going above and beyond? And they honestly said, Lance, honestly, we did not like remember that at all. And I didn't ask her to do this, but she goes, I'm going to like just take down the post and like, or take out those pictures or whatever and not worry about it. And I said, hey, I appreciate that. And I said, look, we could be friends and you can just like not be a worship team member. Like, that's totally cool. But I do call our team to this standard. And, you know, of course, I said this all graciously over an hour-long conversation, right? But what they said to me, they're like, Lance, are you kidding me? Like, that's a small sacrifice to make for us to be able to have the influence that we have in church and be able to impact people. And I said, I really appreciate that you guys have that spirit because, like, that's really cool that you see that, because we do have a lot of people in our church that might be a hindrance to, and I appreciate that you guys are willing to be called to that, you know. So I feel like I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but you guys get my point, right? Where there are no expectations, there's nothing that you can come back to and kind of have those conversations and have them be flexible and kind of moldable with that. Number 3, real quick, what is our onboarding process? And I just wanted to kind of talk through this. Hopefully this will be a help. Again, our onboarding process isn't, hey, I want to be a part of the worship team. Great. You know, you're on next week. Congratulations, you made it. Our onboarding process is kind of a series of, here's what I do. I give them, I do a step myself, and then I give them a step. And then I take the next step, and then I have them take the next step. You say, Lance, what are you talking about? If somebody's interested or I want somebody to be on the worship team, I will first meet with them. Hey, let's meet. And let's say like Tuesday afternoon after they're done with work, they'll come over and I'll meet with them for an hour and we'll talk through some of what we just talked through, the guidelines, expectations, the heart of our team. And then I will give them that full document. I'll give them that 6-page document and go, hey, next step is I want you to read this. Get back to me if you read this and if you have any questions, if you feel like you can agree to it. There's a good percentage of people that they didn't get back to me. Okay. And do you know what that tells me? That doesn't tell me they disagreed with it. What that tells me is, because they stayed in our church, we're still good friends. What that tells me is they didn't follow through. And if they didn't follow through, like going back to your point, are you going to want them to, not show up on multiple Wednesday nights in a row for your sound check? Is it going to come to your Christmas or your Easter event and they're going to be, totally vacant? So what that tells me about their character is, I don't know that I want that person on the team. I want them to take that next step and show me some initiative. When they do that, what I do is I receive that email or that response and I go, hey, great, I'm glad you read it, glad you agree to it. Let's meet again. We're going to talk through Planning Center, and I'm going to show you how to work through the resources and how to use all these things. And I see if they show up to the meeting, and if they come to the meeting, great. We talk through the meeting and hey, the next step is shadowing. And if they don't show up to shadowing or they're not consistent to shadowing a couple times, that tells me something, So do you guys see how it's not just, hey, here's this, great, you're added to the team. There's kind of a series of like, call and response type of thing, like I'll take a step, you take a step, and that does tell me something about their character and their personality and things that I might just need to be aware of. What time do we have till? Oh my goodness, how did we already? Okay, I'm going to work through this quickly, okay? So our onboarding process is this. I have a personal meeting. Step number 2 would be we review the worship leader guidelines. Step number 3 would be their Planning Center invite email. Step number 4 would be shadowing a couple times, and then step number 5 would be that we schedule them for the first time on a Sunday, and then they're in our rotation. Okay, if all that went through, okay. So that's our onboarding process. Hopefully that makes sense, and if you guys have questions about that, just let me know. Planning ahead, I'm going to breeze through some of this so we can get to the questions. Planning ahead, what I do is I plan in Planning Center services, and I plan about 2 to 3 months ahead. What that does is that tells your team right from the get-go, like, hey, not just like, hey, he's organized, like it's a reflection on you. It tells your team, okay, like it's like you're casting vision, right? It's like you're breathing life. Like, man, so I sent out I know this is strange, but I sent out our Easter music, like music all the way through the end of March. I sent it out at the beginning of January. What that tells our team, what it communicates to them is like, whoa, like, let's go. Like, if he's all in on this and he's got this planned, like, there's a vision. Number 1, it's thought through. And then number 2, like, I need to step up my game, to be a part of this, and I need to be all in. So it from the very get-go, from that foundation, it communicates those things. So about 2 to 3 months in advance. There's a lot we could talk about there. And then lastly is this, planning engaging services. Planning engaging services, I think, is a large part of staying organized and building a team. So there's so much that we could talk through here. I'll give you guys high-end kind of how do I plan engaging services. Number 1 would be the song selection. And there's a lot we could talk about here. Mark talked about his criteria for songs. I'm guessing at this point, has he shared those with you as a new team member? The criteria?
Kind of.
Okay, a little bit? Okay. What about you?
The criteria.
Yeah. What those kind of, like what those 3 things are?
No.
Okay.
It's gospel-centered lyrics. Is it singable for our team?
Yeah.
And what's the other one? There's one more. I've talked to somebody.
You good?
It's theologically true.
Theologically,
is it
yeah.
good for us, and is it singable?
Yeah.
Good. There you go. Yeah. Because it could be singable and theologically true, but it just might not be good for your church, like it is about your context. So song selection, make sure you do have some sort of criteria for that, whether it's more theological or whether it's a mix of theological and practical. For us, it's pretty much exactly what you just stated. It's singing songs that are doctrinally solid, songs that have singable melodies. There's plenty of songs that I'll listen to on the radio or by an artist that it's like, that's a great song, but no, it's not doable for a congregation or for our church. So much we could talk about with song selection. There's song selection, there's key selection every week. I'm very sure to select keys that are within a certain range on the piano that work well with female leads as well as male leads. And you got to really invest into that if you're going to do it right. Like you've got to know that range, and then from there you've got to, every song that you pick, you've got to go, okay, like what's a good range for this, and you've got to take some time to figure that out. Again, keys that are singable for the congregation, keys that don't lose the energy of the song. Sometimes, yeah, it might be singable, but like we totally lost, the energy of the song and the heart of the song. Keys that fit both the worship leader and the team's range well. This is more of a tension that you manage. There's kind of two philosophies here in key selection. The first philosophy is we're going to select keys that work really well for our lead singer, and like just everybody else deal with it, like suck it up. The other extreme is that we're only going to select keys that are in a perfect range for our congregation and our team. And what I'm telling you is that's more of a tension to manage. Like it's typically going to be somewhere in the middle of that. For me, the range that sometimes fits the best for my voice is sometimes towards the top of the congregation's range, which sometimes can be a good thing because you're pushing them to sing out, and they're, you don't want to, another half step or step, they might be singing an octave lower, and then you lose the energy of the song, right? So there's a lot of things to work through there, but keys that fit the worship leader and the team's range well. So song selection, key selection. Number 3 would be service flow and energy flow. So that's something that needs to be thought through every week. Like, man, how do we want these songs to flow together? Is it okay to just start out a service with, a really slow hymn like It Is Well? For me, this is just personal opinion. I don't like starting out the service like that. That doesn't help New Englanders who are already just very burnout from work and tired coming in. That doesn't help them wake up, So when I think through service flow and energy flow, I think through, man, what are my songs that are like A1 in terms of energy? Like songs that we can just come out. We're not trying to entertain with those. We're trying to kind of jolt people out of their sleepiness and to engage with us, right? And to sing to the Lord. So service flow, energy flow, make sure that you're thinking through those things. And again, I do have my songs labeled and tagged, like based off of like if they're good in the first slot or the second slot or the third or fourth slot, And to me, there's an energy flow there. Like you need to see some sort of dynamic happen in your service. And for me, it goes high energy to essentially a more worshipful, slow energy. Okay. So service and energy flow. Number 4 here would be band and vocal dynamics. Band and vocal dynamics. Make sure that you're thinking through those. It's really helpful if you, again, staying organized. It's really helpful if you come into rehearsals going, hey guys, we're going to sing unison on this verse. We're going to sing unison on the first bridge. We're going to break out into parts on the second bridge. Band, we're going to build here. Vocals, you're going to follow the band's energy. So band, you're going to set the tone for that. And then vocals, we're going to follow those dynamics. Talking through those dynamics on a song, thinking through those as a leader is huge. And then giving the song some space to go. What I did when I first got a band, if you will, was everyone in at the beginning and everyone out at the end. You guys know what I'm talking about? It's just literally if you were just to take a graph, you just boom, straight across and down, And what the dynamics of our songs need to look like vocally and in terms of band dynamics is you've got to help take the congregation through the journey of the song. And you've got to tell the story of the song, not just in the lyrics, that job's done for you, right? But through the dynamics, that's your job. So we were doing our sound check this past Wednesday night, and we were doing a song called All Sufficient Merit by Shane and Shane. Do you guys do that one here? Or have you guys done that in your churches? That's a good one, by the way. Write that one down if you haven't. It's so theologically rich. Just a great song. But we started out and we're all in singing, and I go, hey, wait, time out. And I turned to Elizabeth, I said, hey, why don't you start this song out? And what am I trying to think through? I'm trying to think through, this song it's got 4 verses, so it's got a while to go. And so it's got to have somewhere to go. So if we start with a solo, maybe from there we've got a place to go. And then we go unison second verse and parts third verse or whatever. So you've got to kind of take your congregation on a journey. For most songs, there's at least a couple bridges, and on that first bridge, like it's like, down bridge, like, bring it down. Let's maybe go unison. Let's let. I think what that does is it allows the church family to like hyper focus on the lyrics, and then from there, man, that second bridge, like let's hit it, like let's go, crescendo, like let's go from, what are the musical choral terms? I'm trying to remember. Let's go from being really quiet to fortissimo. Okay, let's just get after it. All right. So band and vocal dynamics to me is something that really needs to be flow. Band and vocal dynamics. Number 4 would be planning out your transitions. Planning out your transitions. From the very and this will catch you by surprise. If you're not careful. But from the very beginning. What I would do, I don't do this necessarily anymore, but what I would do is I would literally like type out what I'm going to say. And I'd like have it on my iPad or I'd write it out, And to me, you say, Lance, that's cheesy. No, actually what it does is it helps you be more deliberate in like what you're going to say. And it helps you say something that's more meaningful instead of like, church, like this next song just really spoke to me last week. Like you're fluffing it at that point, and like that's not cool. And your congregation can tell that. And you might think you're having a moment, but your congregation can tell like, okay, he didn't plan what he's going to say. And like, he's just fluffing it here. And like, let's get to the next song. Whereas if you plan a verse and you plan a substantive sentence or two to say in between there, it's going to mean a whole lot more to your church family. And it's going to keep their attention away from you and onto the song and onto their Savior, right? So plan out your transitions, incorporate scripture in those. I'd also say don't be afraid of silence. Nathan today, there were times where, he gave us a verse and then he stepped back and he took a minute to grab his capo. And I think sometimes we're afraid of silence in our church. It's like, there's baptism, somebody play something, like there's this, we're giving announcements, somebody play something quick, and like we're always trying to create a moment. And while that's good and fine, I think there's a place for those things. I think there's times where we don't need to be afraid of silence. I think it's okay that it's quiet and that we're focused on what we're focused on. Can you guys give me a couple more minutes? We good?
Sure.
Okay. So plan out your transitions. Yeah, Sam's like, get out of here. And then what I would say is, lastly, just to take into account, is to be aware of your stage presence. Work on your stage presence. I think this is something that's done over time. I think there's a comfort level that has to come with just reps, getting reps in. But work on your stage presence. And what I don't mean is like, practice your worship moves, like, carry the TV, what is that? Tim Hawkins, he does like the whole bit about it, that's not what I'm talking about, but make sure that your stage presence is mindful. There is one person on our team that the moment that person gets on the stage, their eyes are closed. And they think they're in a moment of worship, and that's fine. But what happens is, and I'm not against eyes closed at all in worship, but the entire time, you guys with me? Like, the entire time is a little distracting. It's a little like, is that person okay? Like, we need to check on them, And secondly, it's also a little bit like, you're called to lead the congregation, You're not called to stand up there and be in this personal moment. You're helping lead the corporate body of Christ, so engage them, right? I'm not saying eyeballs on people as you're singing, but I am saying let's communicate these songs. Little things like that. I think we need to understand what our own tics are, and the things that we gravitate to, and we need to get feedback and balance those things out. Taking into account or being aware of our stage presence. And then lastly would be, at least for me, I prepare our clicks every week. So we play to a click every week. We use a resource called Loop Community, and there's tons of them out there, but the main two are Loop Community and somebody help me out if you know. What's the other one? Multitracks. Multitracks is the other one. And most of the bigger churches are using like one of those two, even smaller churches. This can be a huge resource to you. But that's another thing that I do in kind of my weekly prep. So I'm going to stop here. It's 11:20. I think our next one's at 11:30. Let's take like just a few minutes maybe of a question or two. But again, in that weekly organization, song selection, key selection, service and energy flow, band and vocal dynamics, planning out your transitions, your stage presence, and then for me, my tracks. Questions real quick about any of this stuff. There's so much more that we could talk through. And